Kondita en breaking news.
I'm trying to get everybody to think, let's don't do what we did in the 30s. They're going to use a nuclear weapon if they get it. Are they trying to build a nuclear weapon versus a peaceful nuclear power program, Mr. Secretary? Have the Iranians been trying to build a nuke?
There are plenty of indications that they have been moving their way towards something that would look a lot like a nuclear weapon.
I'm Aaron Mate here with Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, Marine Corps intelligence officer. He writes at scottritter.substack.com. Scott, a few months ago, you put out a warning, and you directed your warning at the government of Iran. I want to read some of this. This is what you said. Free will is a double-edged sword, and a nation's survival is its own business. Iran has taken itself down a path where its nuclear program can rightly be characterized as being one short step from becoming a nuclear weapons program. Unless steps are taken to reverse this, Iran is at risk of being assessed by the U.S. as representing an existential threat to both the U.S. and its regional allies. This will likely result in military action designed not only to eliminate this threat, but also the Iranian government, a regime change, nation-killing action. I'm not promoting such a course of action. In fact, I condemn it. But the needle of reality will not be moved by my objections. Iran has the opportunity to avoid this outcome by putting its nuclear program on the negotiating table. This was back in March. And after that, negotiations did happen between Trump and Iran. But as we've seen now, Trump used those negotiations to attack Iran. And, you know, this is something that you were warning about. And my question to you is, given what we've seen now, given the Trump administration basically using the diplomatic process to help shore up an Israeli attack, which has just happened on Iran, talk to us about this warning that you made and why you felt compelled to address it at the government of Iran.
Well, first of all, this warning was put out not just for the government of Iran, but for people who were promoting the notion that Iran should be developing a nuclear weapons program. People are saying that because Israel has nuclear weapons, Iran shouldn't allow itself to be constrained by its legal obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they should be pursuing nuclear weapons. And I've put everybody on note. I'll tell you, the quickest way to get America to drop nuclear bombs on Iran is for Iran to develop a nuclear weapons program. Iran will not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That will not happen. No matter how much people think it's justified and all this, it won't happen. The United States has made it clear that it's red line for it using nuclear weapons against Iran is an Iranian nuclear weapon. So, and so having said that, now I turn to the Iranians and say, why then do you want to posture as a nuclear threshold state, knowing that if you ever cross that line, you bring about your inevitable destruction as a nation, knowing that that will happen? Because it will, it's 100% guarantee that will happen. So you can't make that step. Why then posture as such, which they have done? And it's been acknowledged, not by just Mr. Morande in discussion with me, where I got him to acknowledge, I said, what you're doing is very dangerous. He said, well, we want to be seen as a threshold state. I said, why? Because if you cross that threshold, you die instantly. So why do you want to position as a threshold state, as leverage to get the world to back away from Iran? This is what I meant by this post. Iran is its own worst enemy in this regard. There's no reason whatsoever for Iran to have 60% enriched uranium. None. What 60% enriched uranium does is leave Iran one or two enrichment cycles away from having fissile material usable in a nuclear device. And Iran has accumulated enough 60% enriched uranium that they can produce formally about 3 to 5 nuclear weapons. Some people say they've accumulated enough now to get over 10 weapons. Why? If you're not allowed to have nuclear weapons and you claim you don't want to be a nuclear weapons state, why make yourself a threshold state with genuine nation-killing capacity? Meaning, if you're the state of Israel and Iran does acquire 3 to 10 nuclear weapons, that's game, set, match, goodbye Israel. And Israel can't allow that to happen, nor can the United States. So I've said all along that Iran has been grossly irresponsible in going beyond that which is necessary for doing its legitimate peaceful program. Iran has every right to have advanced centrifuges capable of enriching uranium to support the Bushehr reactor and any other power plants that Iran wants to bring up. Iran has the right to generate 20% enriched uranium to produce fuel plates for the Tehran research reactor, which is used to produce medical isotopes. These are legitimate things that can be directly applied. But once you get beyond 20%, Iran has no need for this. There's no known requirement in the Iranian nuclear program that justifies 60% enriched uranium. And given the environment that we live in, why Iran would choose that path is beyond me, because it's waving the red flag in front of the Israeli bull. And if you wave the red flag long enough, you're going to get charged, which is exactly what happened. Israel was able to, and again, the Iranians don't help themselves with irresponsible statements. Shamkhani, who's apparently dead, together with Salehi and others, have made irresponsible statements over the course of the past several months about, if this happens, Iran could become a nuclear state. We have all the components necessary for a nuclear weapon. We just lack the political decision. Oh, we could change the political decision overnight if Israel attacks our nuclear structure. We are weeks away from having a nuclear bomb. These are statements not made up by me, but put out by the Iranian government, which is why I said this is grossly irresponsible of them. And the only way you can walk away from this, because it's an unsustainable path, it got us to where we are right now, where Israel and the United States have cooked the books and created a theoretical justification for the Israeli strike. The best way to prevent that is for Iran to go to the negotiating table and say, no, we're done with 60%. We're willing to limit it to 3.75%. We're willing to reduce the number of centrifuges, international supervision, put all that on the table to diffuse any, potential for Israel to misconstrue what Iran did. But instead, literally the day before Israel struck, you had senior Iranian officials saying, no, we are moving in this direction. We're going to start enriching more uranium to 60%. And then they start talking about their technological capability. All those missiles you saw hit Israel today, each one of them possesses a technological advancement that is useful in the delivery of a nuclear weapon. Heat shielding for hypersonic reentry is necessary to protect the nuclear core and its electronics. All the things, for instance, when North Korea first started talking about we're going to deliver nuclear weapons, people said, well, they can't do it because their RV can't survive reentry. Well, Iran has solved the reentry problem. These are very sophisticated warheads. And so this is why one of the if you look at the target set, Israel didn't just hit nuclear targets. They hit ballistic missile production and advanced design facilities that I believe were involved in preparing the technology that would enable Iran to rapidly produce a deliverable nuclear weapon. And Israel got that intelligence and said, no, we got to take it out right now, which they did. This is why I blame Iran, because Iran waved the red flag and the Israeli bull took the bait and charged. You don't get to play victim when that happens. I mean, that's my position.
So just if I hear you right, you support Iran's right to enrichment, which they have under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, right? And the Iran nuclear deal, the original one that Trump broke, that gave Iran the right to enrich at a certain low level. But you're saying that because Iran left the door to become a nuclear weapons threshold state, because they left the door open, they didn't have an active program, but they left the door open to one, that helped give Israel what ultimately Israel wanted, which is a pretext it could use. And you're not endorsing that pretext. You're saying that Israel could use it to attack.
You gave Israel the ability to do two things. One, because remember, for Israel to take action, it's not just a unilateral decision of the prime minister. He has to meet with a war cabinet. And the war cabinet has to factor in the greater good of Israel. And the war cabinets in the past have voted against Israel attacking Iran. This isn't the first time that Netanyahu tried to do a unilateral strike, but they voted against it because the consequences of these actions would be devastating for Israel, and they couldn't justify it based upon the intelligence that was very suggestive, speculative, but not definitive. This time, the war cabinet said, we have to go, because Iran was saying things and matching their words with actions that, again, didn't make them a nuclear weapon state, but brought that threshold up to the point that you're literally talking days days. And that's unacceptable. And the United States agreed. And so this is why this was done. Nothing Iran did was illegal. Nothing Iran did was illegal. It's all permissive under the NPT. Not necessarily the additional protocol of inspection and all, but remember, the United States started this, Donald Trump started this by withdrawing from the JCPOA. We started this ball rolling, and then we got Europe to strangle him. We put on new sanctions. What Iran did was to say, if you don't want to comply with the JCPOA, then we will lift all of the restrictions that were put on us by the JCPOA regarding amounts of uranium that can be stockpiled, levels that can be enriched, the amount of centrifuges, the type of centrifuges. So Iran did everything it's permitted to do, but sometimes doing what you're permitted to do isn't the smartest course of action. Sometimes you should get back to just basics, and what they wanted was a nuclear enrichment program that gave them the ability to have a legitimate nuclear power production capability, not to become a threshold state in order to have leverage against Israel and the United States, because Iran thought that its threshold status would prevent an attack. I said, no, it's not going to prevent an attack. It's going to guarantee an attack. And sadly, I was proven right.
So just a few days before Israel attacked Iran, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was questioned by Senator Lindsey Graham.
I'm trying to get everybody to think, let's don't do what we did in the 30s. They're going to use a nuclear weapon if they get it. Are they trying to build a nuclear weapon versus a peaceful nuclear power program, Mr. Secretary? Have the Iranians been trying to build a nuke?
There are plenty of indications that they have been moving their way towards something that would look a lot like a nuclear weapon.
So he says there, Scott, that Iran is moving towards something that would look like a nuclear weapon. Is he talking about exactly what you've been warning about, which is, Iran leaving the door open to becoming a nuclear weapon, a nuclear threshold state, without actually having a nuclear weapons program?
100%. Let me just give you an example. Look at the Fatah 2 missile, which I believe examples of it hit Israel tonight. The Fatah 2 can carry a 900-pound payload. That includes, it's the warhead. That's the total package. Now you say, okay, what kind of device can we put into a 900-pound warhead? Well, you're not going to put an exotic implosion device, but what you can do is produce a gun device. If you go back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what device did we test over in Alamogordo, Los Alamos? The Los Alamos test was a plutonium implosion device. Why? Sophisticated, difficult. But we dropped 2 bombs on Japan. One was a plutonium implosion weapon, but the other one was a uranium gun weapon. Why? Because the uranium gun weapon is going to work 100% of the time. It's just simple physics. It's not the most efficient weapon. There's a lot of slop in it, but you take a uranium slug and you fire it into the pit, and you achieve critical mass, and you got yourself a nice 15 to 20 kiloton explosion. And you can make that 450 pounds. Which gives Iran now another 450 pounds to build, the warhead and the electronics package and have it heat shielded and all that. Iran has built a warhead that can receive a gun style device. Iran has perfected the metallurgy necessary to convert uranium hexafluoride, highly enriched, into uranium metal. So this is what Hegseth meant, and it's what I've been saying all along. Have they done it? Nope. The political decision still says no. But when you have the parliament saying, we want the supreme leader to reverse his fatwa, and when you have the senior advisor to the supreme leader saying the supreme leader can reverse fatwa if conditions exist. For instance, just so people understand, if Israel were to attack our nuclear infrastructure, that represents an existential threat that the supreme leader could now reverse the fatwa under Islamic jurisprudence. That's why the Iranian parliament today is begging the supreme leader to reverse the fatwa, because they violated the. But that decision hadn't been made. But the steps were up there where it could be done instantly. The justification was already. This was a discussion had by the supreme leader and his inner circle. You don't want that discussion to have been had, but they had it, and they already made a decision that it could be reversed. Meanwhile, Iran is putting all the they were getting ready to install a third cascade at a third underground facility. They just admitted that the other day. That cascade, I believe, would have been the cascade that could take it to 90%, 92%. The Israelis were sitting there saying, why are they putting IR-6s and IR-8s? These are advanced centrifuges in this facility specifically configured to advance the enrichment of 60% uranium. That's what Pete Hegseth meant. Iran is developing the pieces that in their totality look as if they are ready to produce something that looks like a nuclear weapon. They hadn't produced it, but they had all the pieces together. It's like saying, I have a puzzle. And and you say, well, having the pieces, does that mean you violated the rule? No, but it means you have the capacity to violate the rule. Iran had all the pieces necessary to produce 3 to 5 nuclear weapons within days. That's the danger. That's the red flag. And that's why the Israeli bull charged.